Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in just 1 minute. Make sure that you have subscribed to us on your favorite social media. Look up Birdland Sports on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Like, follow, retweet, share. See you in a moment.
Hey guys, welcome to Birdland Tonight podcast Takeover. I'm your main host today, Paul Valley from the Bat Around for Press Box Sports. Along with me are the hosts of Nate Hit the Foul Pole podcast. We have Matt Pine and we have Zach Goodman, who is also my co-host on the Bat Around. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Paul.
Yeah, doing pretty good. I have my foot in both camps here, so we decided to combine these and have a little baseball talk on Sunday.
Yeah, and we have 4 days until opening day, and there's quite a bit to talk about. Still some late spring training roster shuffling going on. The Orioles, they optioned Keegan Aiken to the AAA side, or the alternate training side. That is to say, they trade for Adam Plutko from the Cleveland Indians for cash considerations or a player to be named later. And in doing so, they also DFA'd Yolmer Sanchez, who was going to be the starting second baseman for the Orioles this year, the 2019 Gold Glove Award winner with the Chicago White Sox. That was a shocking move to see. Guys, how did you feel about seeing that Sanchez was DFA'd last night?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think everyone kind of had him penciled in as the starting second baseman, so it's kind of surprising when you see a guy like that get DFA'd, especially a guy of his quality. Won a Gold Glove in 2019. Overall, a pretty solid player. He doesn't hit for a lot of average, and he's not going to be a power hitter in your lineup, but he's a guy who can, back up your young pitchers, play solid defense, and give the Orioles defense up the middle where they really need it. So I was kind of surprised to see it, and I really didn't think the Orioles had a lot of other options behind him. Obviously, there's Pat Valaika, Ramon Urias, but it's not a deep position group at second base. So it was kind of surprising to me, and let's see if they bring in someone else. That's always a possibility, but this one was shocking to me for sure.
Yeah, I would say my initial take on things was I wasn't necessarily all that upset about it, but after thinking about it a little bit more, it is going to be a loss for the pitching, having that solid up the middle glove. And I guess they're putting more of an emphasis on the offense. We've seen this spring training when their pitching and defense fails them, their offense really comes through. So it looks like they're just trying to maximize runs.
Yeah, and that may be the thought process there, Matt. I may agree with you on that one because it looks like the offense may have to be the saving grace for this team. Mm-hmm. They're going to have – it's looking like two rookies in that starting rotation when you look at the fact that Bruce Zimmerman's number 3 starter. Dean Kramer's either going to be the number 4 or the number 5 starter when they go to play the Yankees. Then you have Matt Harvey, who's a reclamation project. You have John Means, who is the de facto ace of this staff. And then Jorge Lopez, who – peripheral's not great, has pretty solid stuff, but hasn't had a ton of success at the major league level making starts, although he looked good against the Yankees the other night. So it may have to be that offense, and they go out and they sign Michael Franco to come in and play third base for them. With that in mind, does that move Rio Ruiz over to second base? He did get the start against the Pirates in the exhibition game today at second base, or do you think that he's more of a backup, or is he even ticketed for Norfolk?
See, for me, no one can convince me that Rio Ruiz is a better player than Yolmer Sanchez. I just cannot see that. I don't think that at all in any facet of the game. hitting, defense, anything. So if that was the plan, I would think that would be a mistake to move Rio to second base. He's played 2 major league appearances there. That's not a place where he's experienced and has played a lot. So I think that will be a mistake if that is the case. I think Rio is more going to take the Chris Davis position on this roster where he works in the lineup at first base, a little bit of third base, maybe a couple days a week. And that's kind of the plan for him. I really, at this point, don't see him being sent down to Norfolk. But as far as what the Orioles will do at second base, like I said, I think your best option is Ramon Urias, and you probably have the best bat in Pat Valaika, but the best complete package in Ramon Urias.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I saw a couple tweets earlier from John Shepard, formerly of Camden Depot, and he was talking about Rio, how slow he is on the base paths.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of hard to see a guy that doesn't really do anything extraordinarily well, crack this lineup on a consistent basis. So yeah, I would agree with Zach. I would say Pat Valaika, maybe Ramon Urias as well. At second base.
That Valaika and Urias are going to be the guys to get the bulk of the starts at second base, maybe in a platoon type of thing. Valaika swung a pretty solid bat last year. He hit about 278 with 8 home runs and limited action. So I think he'll get some looks over there. Urias hit fairly well in the final 10 games of the year. He'll get some looks. But again, these guys, they might just be placeholders if Jahmai Jones plays well enough down at AAA. If Richie Martin gets his back going, gets his legs under him. So these guys might just be placeholders until they get an everyday guy up here. And like Zach said, there could be the opportunity to maybe pick up a guy who's put on waivers by another team before the season starts. So that's how the Orioles got Pedro Severino a couple of seasons ago. So that's something that we could look at as a potential for the Orioles moving forward. Now, before we talk too much about this lineup, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity today to talk about the lineup, let's talk about this starting rotation. So far, only the 3 starters have been named for the opening series in Fenway Park. John Means getting the ball on opening day. We've pretty much known that since the end of last season. Then you're going to get Matt Harvey. Maybe the Dark Knight rises here, pitching the second game, which was a bit of a surprise, I think, to everybody because you were thinking it was going to be Kramer. And then Bruce Zimmerman, the Maryland native from Ellicott City who pitched at Loyola, he's getting the number 3 number 3 spot in that rotation going Sunday to finish out that series in Boston. He pitched really well this spring. 9 innings pitched, 1 hit allowed, 10 strikeouts, and 3 walks in his 3 appearances. They said that he pitched really well in intra-squad games and B games and backfield simulation games to get his innings up. Were you guys surprised to see A, Matt Harvey get the number 2 spot in the rotation, and B, a guy like Bruce Zimmerman, who hadn't made a start yet this spring, get that number 3 spot?
Yeah, I mean, for one, Matt Harvey, if we're looking at him, the Orioles must have been extremely impressed by what he's done in spring training, not only in the games we've seen him play on TV, but the games he's played on the backfields. And that they really must have been very impressed with what he's throwing. His stuff, his velocity's probably gone up a good bit. And I think that's surprising to me, seeing him as the number 2 starter. I think everyone kind of wrote Kramer down as that guy, and Kramer still hasn't been announced as anywhere in that rotation, although we're pretty sure he will be probably the number 4. But it's surprising to me, and it's probably great for Matt Harvey. I mean, he's like you said, a reclamation project. He's someone you're trying to find lightning in a bottle with, and maybe he is a guy who can be at least a serviceable starter for you, and that's what I think the Orioles are hoping for with him at number 2. And then as far as Bruce Zimmerman goes at number 3, I think with his spring and what he did, 9 innings, 1 hit, he's deserved everything he's gotten from them. So number 3 starter makes a lot of sense for Bruce Zimmerman. I'm really excited to see Bruce and what he can do.
Yeah. Matt Harvey sitting 93, 95 this spring, which is definitely surprising to me. I know it surprised a lot of folks out there. We were talking about maybe a week and a half ago, he might not even crack the rotation, and now he's the number 2 starter. I'm very much cautiously optimistic about him, knowing his injury history and knowing just like Tommy Hunter, when Tommy went boom, that potential is there for Matt Harvey. But I like what we've seen so far in spring. And as far as Bruce Zimmerman goes, we just had our show, Zach and I, on Nate Hit the Foul Pole last week, talking about him being the 5th starter. So him being the 3rd starter, it's going to give him a lot of confidence, and it really shows that the organization is really behind him.
Absolutely. Zimmerman certainly earned that spot in the rotation. I was a little bit surprised to see him being number 3, but he pitched well enough to be that guy. For Matt Harvey, 5 runs in his last 13 innings, 3 runs in his last 2 starts, covering 5 innings, including 1 hitter against the Yankees last week, and that was the 1 hit was a home run to Gio Urshela. He's looked every bit the part to be in this rotation. Now, Dean Kramer, he's had some ups and some downs in spring training. It's looking like he's either going to be the 4th or 5th starter with Jorge Lopez, who was absolutely fantastic the other night against the Yankees, going 5 innings, allowing 2 hits with the 3 strikeouts and no runs. Those guys are going to be 4 or 5 in your rotation. I don't think Wade LeBlanc factors in. I don't think he's pitched enough, really, to factor into the rotation this spring. Now, Zach, Matt, my question here is, if you recall, Dean Kramer's last start last year was against the Red Sox. He gave up 7 earned runs in 2 2/3 innings, whereas Bruce Zimmerman's last appearance was in relief against the Red Sox last year, 4 innings pitched, 1 earned run. On the other side of things, Dean Kramer, his very first 2 starts of his career were both against the Yankees. He went 11 innings in those 2 starts, struck out 14, just 7 hits allowed, and just 5 hits allowed, and 2 earned runs. Do you think that the success by Kramer against the Yankees and kind of the faltering against the Red Sox and the success by Zimmerman against the Red Sox had something to do with their places in the rotation to kind of get them off to fast starts to start 2021?
Yeah, you make an excellent point. That's something I actually hadn't considered, that this may be a matchup move the Orioles are looking for, and that, Harvey might match up against the Red Sox well, and obviously Zimmerman might, Zimmerman might as well, especially over a guy like Kramer. Like you said, he got roughed up a little bit in his last start there. And like you said, he has a lot of experience against the Yankees. He's pitched generally pretty well against them. So I think that's actually a great point, and I think that's part of the Orioles thinking in doing this. As far as Kramer goes, I do think, like I said earlier, he deserves to be a little bit higher in that rotation. I would say he's the 2 starter, 3 starter, but maybe the Orioles just want that matchup, and I do think that would be a smart move. I think that would make a lot of sense if that is the case.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what we get out of Kramer. Those first 3 starts, like you said, Paul, were spectacular, but you're still looking at a small sample size. It was only 18 2/3 innings. He did have the 22 strikeouts, which is promising, but I think this is kind of where it comes back to. It would have been nice to still have Yolmer Sanchez, because 4 out of the 5 guys, you could argue, in the rotation pitch to contact mainly. So you want to have a really solid defense behind you. And that worries me a little bit, but I do like what I see thus far out of both of these guys.
So we're pretty much looking at a rotation, even though Brandon Hyde hasn't come out yet and said it totally. If you're reading the tea leaves, it's going to be Means, Harvey, Zimmerman, and then either Lopez and Kramer or Kramer and Lopez. So let's look at the bullpen now. And there are guys that are going to be in that bullpen. Cesar Valdez, Tanner Scott, Sean Armstrong, Dylan Tate. I think Adam Plutko is definitely in that bullpen. Paul Fry, Travis Lakins. Cole Salter, is he going to be there? Is Dylan Tate going to be there? Are we looking at Wade LeBlanc? He signed a major league deal, so he's got to be there. The Orioles have 7 pitchers to put into that bullpen after the starting rotation. Who's filling out those spots? Like I said, we named some of the obvious ones, but who's kind of a guy who's an outlier that might make his way into that bullpen to start the year?
Yeah, you mentioned Cole Saucer, and he obviously hasn't had a lot of success, but he is a Brandon Hyde guy. Brandon Hyde has made it very clear he's a huge fan. He debuted him as the closer after only 7 games of Major League experience prior to that last year. So, obviously that's a guy he likes, and I'm sure Brandon Hyde does not want to get rid of him, not want to DFA him. Unfortunately, that's not his decision. It's Mike Elias's. So if Mike Elias were to DFA Cole Saucer, which I think is a good option, I think it should be the plan, especially with a guy like Dylan Tate, who I think deserves the innings, especially what he did in 12 games last year. He was pretty solid. He was I would say he was overly solid. So I would rather give a guy like that a shot, especially over a guy like Wade LeBlanc and Cole Saucer, where you have a guy who can only keep getting better, can keep growing, and can keep learning. And I think that's such an important thing for the Orioles this year, and you're really the whole player development process. So Dylan Tate makes a lot of sense to me. But I do think that one of either LeBlanc or Saucer will definitely be in that bullpen. And like you mentioned, LeBlanc, he did sign a major league deal, so that kind of implicates that he will be in there for sure.
Before you respond, Matt, I said 7 slots in that bullpen. It's actually going to be a 9-man bullpen. I was mistaking my position player number and my pitcher number. But anyway, go ahead and respond there, Matt.
Yeah, Dylan Tate, obviously somebody I keep my eye on. He's not going to break the opening day roster, but Mickey Janis, I'd love to see him get a shot at some point. I know you guys have talked about him on your show, just to see what he can bring to the table. I'm more interested to see who is going to settle into the closer role. I think we kind of assume it'll be Tanner Scott, but it's kind of yet to be seen. I was looking on Fangraphs, and they have Cesar Valdez penciled as the closer along with Scott, so we'll see how it shakes out.
I think with the closer role, it's going to be kind of fluid. I expect Tanner Scott to get a lot of those opportunities to begin the year, simply because his stuff is so electric. However, he still averaged about 4 walks per 9 innings last year, and that's a number that's got to come down if the Orioles are going to trust him in the 9th inning in close games and safe situations. Valdez is more of a jack of all trades. I think you'll see him come in long relief. You'll see him pitch in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and sometimes the 9th innings. You'll see him get a spot start here or there. That's a guy who's really, really valuable in this bullpen and for this rotation, for that matter. Paul Fry, to me, might be an odd man out. And he did not. He only had 2 decent appearances this spring. When you factor in the fact that Tyler Wells, a Rule 5 pick, 6'8", 250 pounds, has pitched really well, including dominating the Yankees with 6 strikeouts in only 3 innings the other day, with just the one, with no hits allowed. I think that the Orioles want to hang on to a guy like that. And Zach and I alluded to this yesterday, especially with letting Zach Pop go in the Rule 5. I think they kind of want to make up for that, keep Tyler Wells. You look at a guy like Max Soroller, who's the other Rule 5 pick, who he pitched 4 scoreless appearances out of his 5, but the one was a really bad look. It was a third of an inning. He allowed 5 runs. He only has 3 strikeouts in those 9 innings that he's pitched so far. 7 innings that he's pitched so far. If you guys are looking at these Rule 5s, do you think that the Orioles keep one? Do you think they keep both? Or do you see them both just kind of being sent back to the teams before Thursday?
Yeah, until Adam Plucto came over last night, I was pretty positive they were going to keep both. I kind of had that feeling, and I think Joe Trezza wrote a little bit of article about it that alluded to that. So I was under that impression, but now they brought in another experienced reliever, a guy that can be a swingman, pitch and reliefs for a long time in some roles. So I do think that Tyler Wells makes this team. I think he deserves to make this team. Like you said, he dominated the Yankees. So I do think Tyler Wells is almost a lock at this point. Now, if he makes it through 162 games, I'd say I'd be a little bit surprised. The Orioles might see what they can get out of him. But if he's not pitching fantastic and if he's struggling a little bit, he might be sent back. But I do think he's a lock for the opening day roster. And Soroller, I think his chances are still kind of maybe 50%. He has a chance if he, puts together one more nice outing here coming up. But I'm not sure. It's going to be a tough spot. It's going to be a tough spot for any of these guys battling for that last bullpen spot because there really isn't much open for a guy like Soroller at this point. But I want to go back to Matt's closer comment for a minute. I think that Sean Armstrong would make a fantastic closer. And just from the way he's pitched this spring and the way I've seen him pitch in the past, I think Sean Armstrong should be a front runner for that position for sure.
Yeah, I know they were talking the game the other night about Sean Armstrong's spin rate being really, really high, along with Tanner Scott. So I'm all for that as well. But if I were to pick one guy out of the both, I would say Tyler Wells makes it. He's projected to strike out a hitter per inning. That's what you want to see out of your bullpen guys. I don't think Scroller's going to make it at this point, just with the acquisition of Plucko. I could be wrong, but I'm going to stick with Tyler Wells as of now.
Well, moving on now to that Orioles lineup. And, the Orioles lineup is pretty exciting for the first time in quite a few years when you look at who they have in there, when you consider Mancini is back healthy and he looks like he's picking up where he left off in 2019. Ryan Mountcastle is a professional hitter. They add Michael Franco, who could hit 25 to 30 home runs. Austin Hayes has been tearing the cover off the ball all spring. And Anthony Santander, if he's healthy, and all reports indicate that he should be able to play tomorrow, and it's kind of just been a precaution with that muscle strain. Not on the same side that he had the oblique strain last year, apparently, but they're just kind of playing it safe with him so he doesn't get hurt, and they have him to start the year. It kind of looks like these spots, like there's no question marks about the 12 position players because you look at Trey Mancini, Pedro Severino, Ramon Urias, Pat Valleca, Michael Franco, Freddie Galvis, Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander, Ryan Mountcastle, and Chance Sisco. And Rio Ruiz. Those are your 12 guys. Is there anybody that's got something to say on this roster that would make it be anybody other than those 12 guys?
I still think, and I've said this on our show, Paul, but I think that there's a good possibility that the Orioles go out and get a veteran catcher, and I would really support that. And obviously, I think the odd man out would be Chance Sisco. He is the worst of the two catchers, in my opinion, just based off defensive profiles. Really, they would want to bring in a veteran catcher for a defensive purpose. But I do think those are the 12 guys we'll start with. And I do think that second base will be a very fluid situation. They'll probably start off with Urias or Valleca there, but they'll probably move one of those guys at some point for a guy like Jahmai Jones. Jahmai Jones is knocking on the door. He had a little bit of an appearance with the Angels last year. He played very well. So I do think Jahmai Jones is very close. Rylan Bannon, of course, too. And then you've got Yusniel Diaz, who's also knocking on the door. So while this may be the lineup now, I think maybe come May, this will probably change a little bit.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think the 12 spots are kind of stuck how they are now. And I think the lineup's going to produce, we were saying on our show, on our podcast, maybe 4 to 5 runs per game. It's highly possible with this kind of potent type of lineup. I was looking at the projections list for every American League team the other day, and every single hitter in the Yankees lineup is projected to hit 20 home runs or more. Wow. Which is insane to me. But you look at the Orioles lineup and you see 6 guys who could potentially hit 20 home runs or more. 5 if you don't really think Galvis can get there. So I think this lineup's going to be very potent. Playing in all these AL East ballparks, I think they're going to score a lot more than people think.
Yeah, this is a lineup. When you have Trey Mancini, Anthony Santander, and Ryan Mountcastle hitting in the middle of your order, and that's before we even talk about Austin Hayes, it's a lineup that would be formidable for any team, in my opinion. Now, how's this lineup going to look? Because who's going to be hitting 3, 4, 5. It's going to be any combination of those guys that I just mentioned. Who's your leadoff hitter? Is it Cedric Mullins because he's the fastest? He led the league in bunt singles last year. He doesn't have great on-base capabilities, but when he does get on base, he wreaks havoc on the base paths, and he has different ways to get on base that other people don't have in their tool bag. Is that who you trust to bat leadoff, despite the fact that his career on base percentage is like right around 310?
Yeah, I mean, Cedric's getting better. He's a guy who, he's really showed out this spring, obviously, but I think giving up the right-handed hitting really helped him take a step forward. So I do trust him, at least to start the season, in that leadoff spot. I think he makes the most sense. I said it before, but Yolmer Sanchez would have made a little sense in that leadoff spot. Now, obviously not the best hitter, but he was all right on base. So he might have made a little bit of sense. Now that he's gone, I think Cedric has to be a lock there. And as far as Austin Hayes goes, he's a guy who I just don't really think excels in that spot. He's had better stats from like the 6, the 7, even the 5 spot. So I would rather put Hayes down there where he can, calm down a little bit and have the chance to succeed. So Cedric Mullins maybe doesn't have the best on base numbers, but he can get up when he does get on base. He's going to steal bases, maybe hit for a little bit of power at the top of the lineup. I think Cedric makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm kind of there too now. I had a different answer about a week ago, but I think I just don't see another better option there. If you're strictly looking at on-base percentages, 300 to 310, besides your power hitters, you're not going to get a better on-base than that. And for Cedric, if he can really set the table, get some steals, I mean, we all know he's not going to be a switch hitter anymore. I think he's going to be your best option there.
Yeah, he's the one that makes the most sense. Now, you look at your number 2 hitter in the lineup, and I think your number 2 hitter is arguably one of your most important hitters in the entire lineup. I was singing DJ Stewart's praises all year, but he hasn't played in 3.5 weeks with a hamstring strain. He has power, he has on-base capabilities, but until he's on the roster and healthy, you can't really pencil him in there. So Trey Mancini was getting a lot of time batting second for the Orioles this spring. Pretty much every game, it seemed like he was batting second. Hyde said that was to get more bats, but do you look at this lineup and say Trey Mancini is probably your number 2 hitter, or is it now Anthony Santander, who drew 10 walks and 37 plate appearances this spring and leads the team with a 487 OBP?
Yeah, I think Santander makes the most sense. Like you said, he's really improved his plate discipline. He's walking more. That's all great to see. So I think him being in that number 2 spot and providing a little bit of power, and then giving Ryan Mountcastle and Trey Mancini the chances to provide more power behind him and drive him in. I think Anthony Santander makes a lot of sense at 2. As far as Trey Mancini goes, he could either be a 3, maybe a 4 guy, but I do really like Santander's on-base capability over the other guys at number 2. So I think he makes the most sense there.
Yeah, I think you want to maximize the total at-bats for your best hitter on your team.
Yeah, good point.
So if that's going to be your 2-hole guy, it's probably going to be Trey Mancini. At his best, I think Anthony Santander is arguably the best hitter on the team. But we haven't really seen a full season out of him yet to know that. So that could kind of be reshuffled when we get into May and June just to see how it plays out. But I think Trey Mancini makes the most sense. High on base, high slugging. He's going to get you some run production.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of times, and we're not saying that Trey Mancini's Mike Trout, but Mike Trout spent a lot of time in his career batting leadoff and batting second for the Angels.
Yeah.
And he's not just the best hitter on the Angels, one of the best hitters in the world. So it makes sense that you want to get that guy, a guy like a Trey Mancini batting second for the team. Right. Now, before we get into talking about this lineup 1 through 9 and what we expect to see an opening day lineup look like for the Orioles, let's talk a little bit about Anthony Santander, because the Orioles were able to get him in that Rule 5 draft because he had that shoulder injury while playing with the Indians, and they felt like they didn't need to protect him because he was injured, and the Orioles take him. And then he began that year injured. We didn't really see him until July, maybe August. I think it was actually August we saw him in 2017. Then he comes up in 2019, hits 21 home runs, and misses the last month of the season with a labrum issue. Then he comes in 2020. He's the Orioles' best player. He's leading the league in home run, up towards the top of the leaderboards in home runs, leading the league in extra base hits and RBIs. And then he misses the last month of the season with an oblique strain. Now he's back in spring training this year, and it looks like he's on the verge of another oblique strain. That's why they're holding him out right now. Do you guys have the confidence that we can see Anthony Santander stay healthy, debut on opening day, and really lead the charge for the middle of this Orioles lineup?
Yeah, Brendan Hyde just spoke not too long ago, and he said that he thinks it's pretty minor, and Santander should be back in the lineup in the next few days. As far as a whole season, I don't know if you can trust him at this point. It's been a lot of injuries in a lot of different places for him. So, for 162, that he's never going to have another IL stint this year, I think is pretty unlikely. I think, that oblique could flare up at any time again, even if it, gets him ready for opening day, right now. I do think he'll play on opening day. I'm pretty confident in that, but I'm not confident that he's going to play a full season. And, that's another reason I've been in support of him being traded, is because you just don't really know what that injury future looks like for Santander.
Yeah, I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith into that. I'm not putting my chips in the middle of the table to say he's going to play 150 games this season. But if you're the Orioles, I wouldn't baby him because he is a professional athlete, but I would be very, very careful with that oblique injury, especially if your plans are to trade him and you want him to be showcasing at his best. You don't want to be him. You don't want to have him playing at 70%. So I like to see, what Hyde has to say with that. That will be in the lineup the next few days, but I'm just a little bit concerned how that's going to play out.
Well, Zach, you're talking about how you're really totally down for them trading Anthony Santander, but then who replaces him? You're looking at Yusniel Diaz, who A, hasn't even gotten his feet wet at the major league level yet. B, hasn't had a ton of success at the minor league level in the Orioles system. And C, has been injury prone himself. Is that the guy who replaces him? And do you really trust him at this point in his career more than you trust Anthony Santander?
I mean, no, not yet. I think Diaz is still a guy who's developing, and I think he has a little bit more work to do before he's a major league player. And I think he could see, 2 months, 3 months in the minors before he comes up. But I think just based on the wealth of outfield talent the Orioles have, there's going to be one guy who can be better than Santander, who can be a player for them that's going to be less injury prone and actually, provide more value. So whether that's Ryan McKenna, whether that's Heston Kjerstad in 2 years, whether that's Yusniel Diaz in 2 months, I'm not sure. But I feel like one of those guys, especially Kjerstad being the number 2 overall pick and probably moves through that system relatively quickly, as an advanced polished college bat, I would say that, you get a bridge player. Maybe it's DJ Stewart, maybe it's Ryan McKenna, maybe it's Yusniel Diaz. but eventually you're going to have to open up a spot for Heston Kjerstad. It's not going to take very long for Kjerstad to get ready. Just like Adley Rutschman, we're going to see maybe, a year and a half in the minors before we're starting to talk about him being a major league player for the Orioles. So I think you're going to have to make a spot eventually. And, whether it's one of those guys, DJ, Yusniel, Ryan McKenna, I don't know. But I think that's the best move, is to make a spot for one of them.
Yeah, and if you do have a position in the system where you have an embarrassment of riches, it is the outfield. So yes, you're losing the production in Santander, but you have this pool to pick from to replace him with. I'm not concerned about them replacing him. It just doesn't make sense to trade him when he's still young. You can still have him playing on potentially the next winning team. So Elias just has to weigh those options.
Yeah, 4 years of team control left.
Yeah.
Switch hitter with power from both sides. Gold Glove caliber defense out there in right field. I'm not on the boat that wants to trade Santander unless I'm blown away. And I think the Orioles would have to be blown away. They're not just going to trade him for nothing. This is a guy who's still under team control, and is a relatively cheap option. Now, millions of dollars, $1-2 million a year isn't cheap to the Orioles at this point in time because of the whole pandemic. But when you get back into normalcy and all that, when he's a $5-6 million player, you can do a lot worse for $5 to $6 million than Anthony Santander manning right field. Now, moving on to this opening day lineup, what are our predictions for the lineup? I'll give you what I think is going to be the starting lineup. I won't give the positions, but I think you're going to have Cedric Mullins is probably going to be leading off, Trey Mancini batting second. Santander batting second, Mancini third, Mountcastle fourth, Hayes fifth. Not Galvis. Maikel Franco sixth. You're going to have Galvis seventh, Severino eighth, and who's the guy I'm leaving out?
Urias, Paleka.
Probably Urias batting ninth. Do you guys see a similar line, a little bit of tweaks in there?
So I would go with the exact same thing, but at second base, I would go with Pat Valleca. I think that's the guy they'll decide on eventually, just because of the bat and the production he had last year, and the fact that Urias is a bit younger and doesn't have the experience that Pat Valleca does. I do think he wins the second base position and becomes that guy. But I think everything else about your lineup is exactly accurate. I love Hayes in the 5-hole. I love Franco in the 6-hole. We just talked about Mullins leading off. And then, the 4-hole might be a little bit of pressure for Ryan Mountcastle, and it may get him to press a little bit. So I would be careful, tread carefully if I'm the Orioles, but I do think that's the best spot for him for sure.
Yeah, I really don't have too many disagreements with the lineup you presented, Paul, or your comment, Zach, but I would be a little bit more in favor of a guy like Chance Sisco having more reps to catcher, just because of kind of the defensive lack thereof defense that Pedro Severino brings to the table. And it makes me a little hesitant to have him behind the dish when you have a Bruce Zimmerman, you have a Dean Kramer, you have Keegan Aiken potentially coming back up. So if they do go out and get that veteran catcher, more power to them. But I would probably hedge with Chance Sisco, who also gives you a little bit better on-base percentage.
Well, we keep talking about this veteran catcher they may bring in. We also have to remember that they have Austin Wynns, who's a good defensive catcher and has major league experience, who's going to be on that taxi squad for this roster. So they may not need to go out and get that veteran catcher. They still could. I'm not saying that they won't, but they still could. Position-wise, I think you're going to see Hayes playing in right field to start the year, and Mullins in center with Mountcastle left. I think that with Santander's oblique, they're going to want to DH him to start the year, just to kind of keep him as healthy as possible, nurse that injury back to health. And maybe if he's not playing defense, all he has to do is focus on hitting. That kind of helps him get a little bit healthier, and then he goes back out to right field, maybe the second or third week of the season. How do you guys see that playing out?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think you're going to see Trey Mancini DH quite a bit because obviously he's coming back from not playing baseball at all in 2020. So I do think you'll see Trey at DH and Ryan Mountcastle at first a considerable bit, probably more towards the end of the season. But even now, Brandon Hyde wants to give Trey Mancini kind of an off day and give him a DH spot. But yeah, I agree with that. I think Santander, especially coming off an oblique injury, like which we talked about, it's not going well for Davis right now. It's, Richard Blyer took 6 months one time to come back from that. It's not an easy thing for any player. So you don't want to have that flare up on him and be a problem for the whole season. So DHing Santander definitely makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Austin Hayes in right field to me is a dream after seeing the strike that he threw to the home plate the other night. I have all the faith in the world he can make that throw from the scoreboard in right field. And little shades of Nick Markakis, having that cannon out in right field gives you a lot of confidence, if a ball goes out there. So I'm in agreement with you guys.
Now let's talk about Austin Hayes for a little bit here, because going into Friday's game, he was leading all the majors in batting average for qualified hitters. Now there's a guy for the Pirates, I think, Kevin Newman, I believe is his name.
Yeah, Kevin Newman, yep.
He's in like 741 the other day, but I don't think he had enough at bats to qualify. Austin Hayes has been playing with his hair on fire. And this is a guy, he was a third-round pick in 2016. He was the first draft pick from the 2016 draft class to make it to the major leagues in 2017. Was a finalist for the National Minor League Player of the Year in 2017 after hitting like 350 with 30-plus bombs and 90-plus RBIs. And then he's been injured. He's had his share of injuries, whether it's the thumb or the shoulder or the broken ribs. When he's healthy and producing to the top of his capabilities, he's a difference maker in the lineup and on the field. Is this the year that we see Austin Hayes, A, stay healthy, and B, break out and become the player that we saw in 2017?
Yeah, Hayes was always my favorite prospect in the system ever since he was drafted. I just loved the 5-tool capability. He's a guy I just always saw taking off and being something more than what he's kind of become over these past couple of years. And obviously he's been hindered by the injuries, and they've been the reason where Austin Hayes hasn't really taken off and become a household name yet for Orioles fans. But I do think Hayes is a guy who's going to, maybe be a little bit more than he has been the past couple of years. I do think if he can stay healthy, he will be a very solid player, everyday player for sure. Like Matt mentioned, that cannon he has in right field is going to be very useful, even in center, of course. I'm excited to see the strides he can take. Obviously, the injuries are what we have to worry about. Him, Santander, there's lots of guys that we kind of have to have concern about in the outfield. And, as much as I love Austin Hayes, we can't not mention the injury history with him. And he generally plays very hard. He goes all out on everything. He's jumping into walls, sliding into every base. He's an all out guy, and I love that mentality. But he's a guy that often gets himself injured because of that. So while I think Austin Hayes is going to have his best year as a major leaguer, I'm also a little bit worried about the injuries for sure.
Yeah, to answer your question, Paul, my answer would be, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be healthy. I don't know if he's going to be what we're seeing now. But this is Austin Hayes. He gives 150% every single bat, every single play. He's an all-effort guy. He's got all the talent potential in the world. We see that. It's very evident. It's, Austin Hayes' biggest enemy is Austin Hayes. He just can't get out of his own way, whether it be injury, whether it be, batting leadoff and not, getting in a good rhythm. He's just got to break through that somehow. I hope this is the year. This would be a tremendous year to do it, really cement himself as a future outfielder on this team. So we'll see.
Well, I think that what we're seeing with Austin Hayes is what you saw with Bryce Harper at the beginning of Bryce Harper's career, where he played with that reckless abandon, and you would see him spend a lot of time on the injury list because he's running face first into walls, diving head first into bags, and you don't lose that fire, that flair for the dramatic in your career, but you learn when it's appropriate. You don't need to, if you're down 9-2 in the 8th inning, you don't need to be running full bore face first into a wall to catch a ball into the gap when you're probably not going to win that game. So I think that's a learning process for a guy like Austin Hayes, and that's something that maybe he's starting to realize. I'll tell you what I've seen from him this spring. We saw glimpses of it in the past, but we never saw it for such an extended period like we are right now. I think that he's going to have an exciting year for the Orioles and really show himself to be a breakout player and potentially all-star caliber. Now, we're expecting the Orioles to lose a lot of games. I don't know how many all-stars they're going to have on this team this year, but I think they're going to have a lot of guys who have that all-star potential that we see this year. Now, before we get into our Orioles predictions for 2021, let's talk about storylines for a second here. What's the bigger storyline for 2021? Is it Trey Mancini in his quest to be comeback player of the year coming back from colon cancer? or is it Adley Rutschman and his potential debut and what he could do being the number 2 overall prospect in baseball, arguably the best catching prospect since Joe Mauer?
I think just based on the fact that Trey Mancini is such a proven commodity and everyone knows kind of what you're going to get out of Trey Mancini in 2021, even coming back from what he has, I still think he's kind of proven. We know what we're going to get. I think the story's Adley Rutschman. It has to be Adley Rutschman. He's such a big deal, and what he does at Bowie, everyone will be putting that under a microscope every night, and watching what he does. I'm sure there will be so many videos of his at bats and everything. This is what Orioles fans are really paying attention to. Trey Mancini, it's obviously extremely exciting. I'm so happy he's back, but Adley Rutschman is going to be the face of the franchise. He might already be the face of the franchise now, and that's your future. And that's what Orioles fans, I think, are going to pay attention to most.
Yeah, I would say overarching storyline goes to Trey, just because all of Major League Baseball is behind him. Like it's a pretty well-known story by now. I remember Jameson Taillon went through the same thing. We've had this before. Players that have dealt with cancer. So he, especially in the first half of the season, I think he's going to be the main storyline. If and when Adley does get that cup of coffee, comes up, he's going to be the most exciting player in town. No question. He's kind of already your face of the franchise. I mean, maybe it's Trey Mancini, but he's definitely the future. Adley is. Very excited for that, and I think that's probably going to be the most tuned into Masson game all year, his first game.
Yeah, my opinion, to begin the year, maybe the first half of the season up until the All-Star break, the story's going to be Trey Mancini. And I think that if he comes out and hits 270 with 15 to 17 home runs in the first half, that's the Orioles All-Star representative, because all of the eyes in the baseball world are on Trey Mancini with the Orioles. Now, when you get to the second half of the year, if Adley's down at AA or he's got a promotion to AAA and he's tearing the cover off the ball while playing great defense, the storyline's going to shift, because it's going to be like, what does this guy have to prove anymore? This dude he's the best catcher in the organization. He should be on the major league roster. And it's going to come down to, is Bowie, playing for a postseason berth and maybe a AA championship? Or do the Orioles want to bring this guy up to be on their roster on a losing team? What do they do there? So I think that maybe the first 4 months of the season, you're looking at the big story is Trey Mancini and his comeback, but the last couple months, it's Adley Rutschman, and he be at the major league level. Now, I'm sorry, does somebody want to say something about that?
No, I mean, I just agree with you. And I think that's a good analysis of looking at it. Half and half. Adley Rutschman becomes the story more towards the end of the season, especially if Bowie, like you said, is in playoff contention. That would make a lot of sense. And Trey, I think everyone's excited for him, and I think everyone kind of knows what we're getting at him. So that's my reasoning for that. But I do like the kind of half and half analysis you have there for sure.
Yeah, and the half and half certainly seems like a cop-out, but I think it's honestly the most realistic thing. Once Trey Mancini gets going and he starts putting up Trey Mancini-like numbers, it's going to be like, okay, this kind of old hat. And then it's the exciting number 2 overall prospect. So even though it sounds like a cop-out, it just seems like the most realistic thing. Now, we're approaching that 45-minute mark that Zach talked with us about before the show started. So let's get to our predictions. I'm going to let Zach go first, then Matt, and then I'll give my prediction for the Orioles 2021 season. And you guys can give a record prediction, what you're looking for, whatever you want to do with this.
Yeah, so instead of saying 67 and 75 like I did on the show yesterday, 67 and 95 is the number I'm going with. I think that's a fair number. I think the Orioles, they're going to make strides this year. It's going to be an exciting year to watch all the prospects, all the young guys. They're going to keep filtering in throughout the season. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for individual performances instead of the win and loss column. That's what I'm focusing on. Guys like, Jahmai Jones, all of your young guys, Dean Kramer, Keegan Aiken, Bruce Zimmerman, those are the guys I'm focusing on. That's what I'm watching. Matt Harvey, if he has great starts, sure, fine, great. May win the Orioles a couple more games, but I'm looking at Dean Kramer, Keegan Aiken, those kind of guys to have great years. I'm going to be focusing on more and more of the prospects, and I hope to get to a lot of minor league baseball games as well to see what the Orioles have down in that farm system. Gunnar Henderson, as much as we talk about Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, Heston Kjerstad, those guys are such big stories as well. So that's what I'm focusing on, not so much the win and loss column for the Orioles, but the young talent. It's what the future of the Orioles is, and that's what I'm focused on for this year.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Individual performances for me. Pitching performances, we still haven't had really that Chris Tillman type guy. John Means, could still be that guy. He still has potential to be that person. But if you're looking at guys like Dean Kramer, maybe next year we get a taste of DL Hall or Grayson Rodriguez. We can see what they bring to the table. But really solidifying that guy, that pitcher that's going to lead you into the future, I think is pretty important for the 2021 season.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys on this one. I think that a lot of the excitement is going to come from the minor league level. Seeing guys like Heston Kjerstad and Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Jordan Westburg kind of get their feet under them and see what they do. You're going to see all those guys pretty much at high A or above at some point this year. That's the most exciting thing for me, aside from Ryan Mountcastle. I am so excited for a full season
here.
of Ryan Mountcastle. That bat is special, and he's going to put him. I really believe he's going to put himself on the map this year, and people are going to see what we've been seeing basically his entire professional career. As far as wins and losses, I said on the show yesterday, I'm looking at 72 and 90, which is kind of an orange Kool-Aid type of deal for the Orioles, but I think their offense is going to be that good, and I think that you're going to see Dean Kramer and Bruce Zimmerman have some up and downs to begin the year, but I think you'll see them kind of settle in towards the middle of the season, along with some of those other young pitchers like Zach Lowther and Alexander Wells and Michael Ballman, who could come up and get their feet wet and kind of give us a glimpse of what the future is going to look like. I really think that this is the last season that we're going to see the Orioles sort of rebuilding. And I think that starting in 2022, you're going to see more of an emphasis on wins. I think that's when you're going to have Adley Rutschman as your starting catcher, and you're going to have guys like Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall knocking on the door. And that's when the Orioles are going to start emphasizing those wins. So this year, I'm looking forward to this as being the bridging the gap year, and maybe the last year of kind of a downward trend, and then more of an upward trend towards the end of the season. So, guys, it's been a great time talking baseball with you, talking Orioles baseball as we gear up for opening day. This has been Birdland Tonight. I'm Paul Valley, host of the Bat Around, along with Matt Pine from Nate Hit the Foul Pole and Zach Goodman from Nate Hit the Foul Pole and from the Bat Around with me. So guys, any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I'm just really excited for opening day this week. It's my favorite day of the year for sure. Looking forward to getting to watch these guys that we've been hearing about for so long. I mean, Ryan Mountcastle is so exciting, like you said. I cannot wait for a full season of him. And luckily, he's kind of stayed healthy throughout his career. So 162 games of Ryan Mountcastle, I'm excited for that for sure. That's really what my focus is on coming this week.
Yeah, my only closing thought would be, if you're listening to Birdland Tonight for the first time, we're going to be doing a post-game show after every single game. So please tune in for that. It's going to be different people every time, different podcasts and shows. So very excited to get that going this season.
All right, guys, this has been Birdland Tonight. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul Valley from the Bat Around, and that's been Matt and Zach from Nate Hit the Foul Pole. We'll talk to you guys all year long here on Birdland Tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.